Hi, friends and family. IB here. I have a little bit of time before work today, and I thought it'd be a good chance to dig into chapter 5 again and just share a few more pages with you. To summarize where we were last time, in the beginning of chapter 5, Caesar has just met the old show. He's an old man. He's a tribe one of the Wild, like Caesar. They're both in the Valence, and they're both kind of in the war zone of the Valence on the fringes of hell. And Casisa has never met this showman before, as far as the reader knows, and she's trying to learn a little bit about him, and he's kind of being a little bit enigmatic and a little bit mysterious. So she has been asking him a few things, and the last thing that she asked him was his role in the tribe. And you'll learn more about what this means later in the book, but essentially she's asking him like what he's doing there and what his intention is. And if this was like a modern army, it'd kind of be like asking him what his MOS is or what his occupation is, what's his job, what's he's doing. And he's kind of joking and being snide and quiet about it. And she asks him more assertively, and he says to wander. So his job, his role in the tribe is to wander. And that's the last thing I said when I left off. So let's pick up right from there. The old man poked his head all the way out, wagging it side to side. He replied, to wander. Casisa pressed her lips together, nodding, then tried again. How about this, then? Which animate is your guide? The wandering show brightened, his eyes widening. Ah, he exclaimed, you're an animate lover. He shot his hand out over the edge so fast that Casisa flinched. She felt a flush in her cheeks and expected a laugh from her new friend, but the man looked intent as he fully extended his arm. Look, he urged, as he opened his clasped hand. Casisa did. A cockroach twitched its antenna up at her, then flew. It landed on her great forehead. The show guffawed with eve-cracking laughter. The roach scuttled over her head, out of her hood, and disappeared from her senses. Casisa stared at the man, while his laughter bounced his head softly atop the great stone of his birth. Well, Casisa continued, I found you, old friend, by following the owl. Have you seen it? The old man snorted, then said, yes. He slid down from the boulder top. In the dim light of almost eve, she saw a taut and cut upper cup, wizened down to the sturdiest and snappiest parts. He wore a simple breechclout over his levers, and was bare-legged besides. He looked up at her, for he was maybe half her height, and said, this is my deployment, little great one. I follow my Leah. My Leah is my guide, and my Leah led me to the great pine tower of my tribe, and its tower halls and passages led me to the wilderness of Artus Ra, and in the wilderness I met Shogos. And after I'd met Shogos, and passed his macabre and marvelous tests for me, he introduced me to another one roving the wilderness weirdness. That one is the owl. The old man looked back up the boulder. Grinning at some secret in the sky, he cocked his head sideways and said, Shogos told me to follow the owl. I followed it here. Casisa nodded and said, my name is Casisa of the Rim. He nodded back. She waited for a telling, his name perhaps, or a response to her wondering about his role. But the man only bent at the waist, pinched one nostril, and fired a bolt of snot into the ground from his other. He straightened and mused, so, like you, I follow the path that Artus Ra's mind made for me, and it seems that he meant for us to meet here on the fringes of hell. Yes, Casisa agreed, and I suspect it would be best for us to camp together this eve. That is certain. Casisa replied, I appreciate it. Yet she thought to herself, he still won't tell me who he is. And a voice within her rebuked, he tells you plain enough. He's a kooky, half-cracked shaman chasing dreams. Caesar cleared her throat and said, "He has a plan for our bearings, and perhaps intends for us to serve each other as we serve him." The show bowed. When he looked up, he asked, "How am I meant to serve you, I wonder? As a meal, perhaps? Are you going to eat me with those great teeth? I've heard tell that marchers eat anything that breathes." She laughed and bowed in return. She said, "I prefer real meat, not gristly bone and sweaty feathers." The old man brushed away the snub as he brushed an itch from his faint gray mustache. He looked up the side of the boulder again and said, "Well then, let's serve each other, as you said, by sharing camp and sharing supper. I am always glad for a friend nearby in the darken of eve. I have a bed of coals smoldering nearby. There's a little food. Also some bedding in a nook sheltered behind these rocks." He started to turn. Caesar, though, was enjoying the curious conversation and couldn't help goading him a bit more. "Do you have a weapon, baldest one?" The show sniffed at that. He looked at the club in her hand, then patted at the slight bulging shapes coming out of Caesar's cloak. He said, "Does a woiled one even need a weapon when they stand so near a marcher?" He knocked on something hard, concealed beneath the drape of her sealskin cloak and hugging the meat of her thigh. He then glanced at the club in her hand and chided, "You have enough weapons for both of us." I think I'll stop there. Good little introduction to the setting up of this scene where Caesar and the show are kind of getting to know each other more and more. You're learning more about the tribes and learning more about how their culture works and how their language works. It's very different from our own, quite different from our own. And you're also, through the show, interacting with her, you're seeing more of Caesar, as he was commenting on some of these concealed things under her cloak, and a little bit about her being a great one and her great teeth, and marchers will eat anything that breathes. Just little wonderings and little things that's going on now about like what Caesar's really like, and also learning more about the tribes and the war by interfacing with the show. And that's actually not to tell you too much about the future of the story, but that's really what happens with her in the show for a lot of the next few chapters, is just some conversation and some storytelling and some kind of easing into the world for the reader about like what the world is like and what the tribe ones are like, what the different tribes do, and just some interesting stuff about the story itself, and with some actual plot development and some character development in the story. But anyways, this is the beginning of that. I like talking about my book, and I like talking about the structure of it as well. Not just the story, but also the structure. Anyways, thanks, guys. Hope you enjoyed this. Bye-bye.